what appears to be the final chapter in one of the world's longest and most bitter civil wars. Late today, Sri Lankan Special Forces reportedly ambushed and killed the leader of the Tamil Tigers, Velupillai Prabhakaran. If true, his death adds emphasis to the end of the Tamils' 26-year bid to create an independent ethnic homeland in the north of the island nation, a bid that cost an estimated 80,000 lives from a population the size of Australia's. At their peak, the Tamil Tigers were one of the world's most feared terrorist groups after pioneering suicide bombers and assassinating Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. The Sri Lankan government is celebrating victory, but others are less sure that the bloodshed is over. Meanwhile, the International Red Cross has described the situation as unimaginable humanitarian catastrophe. Matt Peacock reports.
After a quarter of a century of bloody warfare, the Tamil Tigers have finally begun to lay down their arms. But does the Sri Lankan Army's victory really mean an end to the region's longest-running modern war?
The war is not over. The war will continue because it is a struggle. So the battle is lost, but the war will continue.
It's the end of the civil war and it's a dawn of a new era.
During the past 3 months, the Sri Lankan Army has tightened its grip on the remaining Tamil forces, while international aid agencies have warned that tens of thousands of civilians have been trapped in the war zone with little food, water, shelter or medicine, fleeing the constant bombardment from government troops in whatever way they could.
Good to see you.
It's a humanitarian disaster that US President Barack Obama last week condemned.
Without urgent action, this humanitarian crisis could turn into a catastrophe.
Already there's celebrations on the streets of Colombo over the possible end of a quarter of a century of conflict. And amid a continuing media blackout, the Sri Lankan government has claimed that trapped civilians have now been evacuated to safety.
We are pleased to tell you today that all of the civilians who were inside the no-fire zone have now been rescued by government forces.
The LTTE, or Tamil Tigers as they're known, took up their armed struggle in the 1970s as a reaction to the increasing discrimination against the Tamil minority, many descendants of labour imported by the British 2 centuries ago by the Sinhalese majority. Tigers resorted to guerrilla warfare and soon became notorious for suicide bombings, extending their war even to the sea, sinking Sri Lankan ships. But the more recent breakdown of a 2002 ceasefire saw a sustained government military campaign against the Tigers. They once laid claim to nearly a quarter of the country. This year their territory shrank to this, the so-called no-fire zone. Now, despite government reassurances, concern from aid agencies like the International Red Cross over the plight of the civilian population is high.
These are people who've been repeatedly displaced from their homes over the past few months. These are people who fled in front of the conflict until they got stuck in this area where they were trapped since February. No adequate medical care, not enough food, not enough sanitation. So the first thing is to help them in the short term. The second thing, though, is to clearly make it possible for them to return home as soon as possible.
So a lot of international observers have stated that it was a bloodbath. A lot of people have died, more than 3,000 people have died within the last 48 hours or 72 hours, and the bodies are lying all over.
Victor Rajakalendram of the Australasian Tamil Federation believes that peace after such violence will be hard to find.
One side is celebrating the defeat of the other side. So the mentalities of these two communities are going to harden.
As a result of the LTTE's marginalisation from power in Sri Lanka, that the moderate voices of Tamils can come out and now negotiate a settlement to the actual conflict.
Edith Cowan University's Sergei da Silva Ranasinghe is optimistic, though, that a lasting peace might be brokered.
Many among the Sinhalese have gone through a protracted civil war, and they're not looking forward to a recommencement of hostilities in the long term. I would also say the other thing is that India as well, now that Congress has come out on top, it's more looking like India will pressure Sri Lanka to come to some sort of political settlement.
It's to the international community, and especially US President Barack Obama, that the Tamil community has now turned for a political solution. Without international pressure, despite the reported death of the Tamil Tigers leader, their calls for greater autonomy are unlikely to go away.